This is Jeremy Toeman, and today on Founder at 50, my guest is Sarah Rose, a startup veteran and pioneering product leader with decades of experience building iconic consumer tech companies. From her early days at Anderson Consulting to launching one of the first group buying platforms on the internet, Sarah has been at the forefront of innovation since the dot-com era. In this episode, Sarah recounts building a startup from the ground up, literally, where they used wooden boards and sawhorses instead of even buying desks. We also dive into her leadership time at ModCloth, where she helped pioneer user-generated content in e-commerce long before it became the norm. As fellow product leaders, we also ruminate on the early days of product management and what it was like to build product without any of the tools we all have today. Sarah offers honest reflections on navigating the tech industry as a woman, balancing motherhood and ambition, and why empathy and taste still matter in the AI age, maybe even more so. Whether you're an aspiring product manager or a seasoned founder needing a little personal inspo, Sarah's story is the one for you. Sarah, how are you today?
I am doing so well. How are you, Jeremy?
I'm doing great, thanks. I want to get something out of the way before we dive in too far, and it's kind of serious, which is I'm really sorry we stole your spot at Grattan Elementary School 14 years ago. I feel terrible to this day.
You know, I appreciate your apology, but all is forgiven. And thankfully, kids ended up at a great school and had such a wonderful elementary and middle school experience. So thank you for making that happen for us.
My pleasure. Now, we did meet through our children actually going to the same school. We all ended up at private schools in San Francisco together. And you're one of the people that, when I went to the school, I was like, her career is amazing. And we got to know each other a little bit, but I've always been watching all the things you've gotten your hands into. And we both had product leadership in our career. So I want to figure out how you got there and then start going from there if that's okay with you today.
That sounds great. And let me just say the feeling was mutual. From across the community hall meetings, I had those same reflections about wow, this guy is so smart and, in the same industry and just love watching what he's up to. So thank you.
Well, thank you. So take us back to where you got your beginning in your career. Where'd you go to college? And then what was the first thing you went off to go do?
Sure. So I went to school at Duke University. And I was an environmental science and policy major. So I didn't know what the internet was. I think most people had no idea what the internet was. And my first job upon graduating from Duke was at Anderson Consulting. I also had no clue what I was getting into. And I'm going to date myself here for a minute. But when I applied to Anderson, I literally put a piece of paper in a box on a table. And someone picked up the piece of paper and decided, this person looks interesting to talk to. So I credit a lot of my career, by the way, to serendipity. And that was a moment of serendipity in my career.
I love the serendipity as things get started. I have some fun stories already on that. But I want to push, what about environmental stuff? There was Greenpeace, there were other opportunities out there. Was that present after you graduated, or was it got to go get a job time?
Yeah, great question. So when I started at Anderson, I was technically in their environment, health, and safety practice.
Okay.
However, what I quickly learned was after they trained me in computer science, they took all of their first years and we went to St. Charles. If you were part of Anderson years ago, you would know they have this amazing training facility where I learned CS, I learned how to code in C. I learned network architecture. I learned database design, all of these things to ultimately help large multinational corporations avoid environmental regulation. So I did that job for about a year. So it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. However, I discovered technology. And it was not something I had ever thought about before, but I was like, this is really cool. You can do incredible things with this. You can change markets with this. You can help change people's lives. You can solve all kinds of problems. So I quite literally was sparked and fell in love. And I was on a path evermore to work in technology companies.
That's amazing. I actually couldn't possibly have imagined that your start of tech was, I guess, a late bloomer at the time. I mean, it was still a young bloomer as the world was going on. How long did you stay with Anderson?
I was there for 1 year. And then I went to a company called Bond, which was a software company. It was a competitor back in the day to SAP or Oracle. And I did the same kind of work, like systems integration work. Essentially, I was in Houston, Texas, working for Anderson, and I wanted to get out to San Francisco. So Bond moved me out. And I did that for a couple of years. And I remember very specifically having a moment where I decided, I want to be the one making decisions. I didn't want to put decks together and hand them over to the client and have someone else do it. And so even really early on, like in my 20s, I realized, no, I want this to be my call. I want to make the decision. I want to go and be the client. I want to be on the client side. So that was when I transitioned into a startup role, actually, as employee number one.
And what startup was that?
Worst name of a company ever. The company was called Accompany.
Okay.
And it was a great name in that it was the first group buying on the internet. So it was the first time anyone had leveraged the platform of the internet to bring people together to get volume-based discounts. So simple, but yet revolutionary at its time. Like no one had ever done this before. And so my now husband was the founder of the company. We were dating at the time. And him and two of his friends officially founded the company. And they asked if I wanted to help out because I was probably the most technical person that they knew at the time, funny enough. And I agreed to it. And I just immediately loved it. Like we were on the .com roller coaster and it was everything the history books say it was. It was an incredible experience.
So I'm curious, before we go into the experience, I came out of college, I started my own company at that time, and I had been working effectively on my own in college. So when it was time to sort of figure out what I was doing, doing a startup wasn't even like a question / thought. It was probably just what was going to happen. But you came from a much more, for lack of a better phrase, sort of stable, traditional, this is a job, this is a different job. Was that a hard thing to say, to like go into this .coms, what's a startup? Oh my gosh, there's no resources. I'm guessing you probably worked on either the floor or a door on hinges or something like that. What was that about for you at that age? Was that scary? Was that easy? Tell us a little bit about that.
I will say you nailed it. Our desks were literally wooden boards on sawhorses. So that's exactly where we were, all drinking the Kool-Aid, with the hoop in the back of the office, the ping pong table, like everything you would imagine it would be. But there was so much energy back in the late 90s here in San Francisco. And there were so many people who were embracing that form of work and that type of innovation. It was not a hard decision at all. And certainly, the truth is at that moment in my life, what I have to lose? Nothing. I had no children, house, no mortgage. Like, why not? There's a reason why a lot of that risk taking happens at that age, and it can happen at any age. But back then, I don't think I thought twice about it. It was like, yeah, let's just do it and see what we can make happen.
Amazing. And so I'd love to hear about that very earliest stage of getting a company, which, by the way, I recall as a company. Sorry. What was that earliest stage of, like, what actual infrastructure, if any, did you own the domain name by that time? Like, what did you join?
Yes. I don't think we owned, when I joined, we didn't own anything. I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, are you Canadian?
Yeah, eh?
You're Canadian. So our first real technical hire, we hired out of Toronto because both of the founders were, my husband was not, but his two founders were from Toronto. And Waterloo had such an incredible program that we found a real technologist, a real engineer. And I remember going to Toronto with him, and we were literally setting up boxes, like servers. There's nothing in the cloud, right? Like nothing existed. We were like actually setting up the infrastructure to have a website, like at the most basic level. At that time, being a product manager, no one actually knew what that job was, right? Like we looked at the models of media and we saw producers, like, okay, it's a little bit like producers. And we looked at software companies. We're like, oh, it's a little bit like program managers. And then there's this thing kind of in the middle that's relevant for internet. pick from here, pick from there. And I remember I had one good friend who was also a product manager at a different startup. And we would talk to each other and be like, so I think there's this thing called a roadmap, and, it helps indicate what we're going to do and when, and do you have a template? And we were making at the time also all kinds of design decisions. Like there was no UX, like that didn't even exist, right? So I was creating wireframes, or I don't even know if we called them wireframes, but pictures on PowerPoint slides. Like Microsoft
Yep.
PowerPoint did exist. And we put this on slides, information architecture. I was doing all of that, writing the specs and these long documents. I mean, this stuff is ancient history, but this is how we did it, at the time.
Even the way we approached early stage product documents, like I wrote a 240-page use case document for the Sling box, right? I don't know if anyone read it. I'm not convinced the engineers looked anything past the
That's right.
highest level use case bit and was like, all right, we'll figure it out from here, right? And now you can prompt your way to a PRD in like 3 steps.
3 steps. It's so
Right.
different. And so figuring out all of that, right? To your question about what stage was it in, just putting together literally the boxes all the way up. And I remember one of the maybe coolest parts of the experience was thinking through how to visualize group buying on the internet. Like, what did that actually mean? When people came to your website, what did they see? How did you communicate this concept on a web page of volume-based discounts? And we went through so many iterations of that. So it could be like a customer could easily get it. And we ultimately won a Webby Award for that, I might add.
Very
But
nice.
it was a really incredible opportunity, back in the day. And I learned so much. And thankfully, over time, the industry matured and people with cognitive behavior, human computer interaction degrees were born, and they became UX designers, and product became much more strategic and leadership oriented and whatnot. But that training ground where you were truly a generalist and you had to see every single part and build it all from the ground up was an incredible place to start my career.
I love that. I think it's also a hard to relate to period for a lot of younger product leaders these days, where that sort of scrappiness where there was no prior art, right?
Right.
When I wrote a PRD document, I didn't have 400 templates to choose from. In fact, I had 0 templates. I had the other document I had created that I had then created from the previous template. And then somebody was like, oh, you should add this section to it.
Right.
Right. And I think it taught us a way of working that is a little missing. I think when I coach younger product leaders, and I'm curious your take on this, I find I have to really reinforce, like, sometimes you shoot from the hip. Sometimes you make a gut call because you're not going to have the data. And even if you have the data, my co-founder went on he was on a different podcast on this topic of like, what if you have the wrong data, right? What if, we had 100,000 users show up, of which 95,000 had no relevance to what we were doing, right? So that's bad data. How do you look at the world of PMing these days? I'm curious.
This might be where we talk about AI, right? And how AI changes everything.
It might come up once or twice. Somehow it seems to make the waves. I'm not sure why.
Exactly. So, being a PM in the age of AI is, I think, another really exciting time in the development of the career, essentially. So the career was born when I was entering the workforce, and I've been riding that wave. And I think it has evolved, over the last couple decades, certainly. Like, you talk about a 200-page PRD now to a few prompts, right? Like that's real. And I think product managers today have these incredible tools at their fingertip to understand customer insights, to quickly prototype, to get things out there and get data faster, cheaper, better than they ever have before. But I think you're right. Like, I agree. And that so much of it is art and science, right? There's the science, but then there's the art, right? And that doesn't go away. It used to be that the big constraint that a product manager really had to think about was actually engineering horsepower, right?
Right.
And once that constraint starts to be lifted, and it's happening in real time right now, and you can just bring to market feature after feature after feature, the importance of product management, in my opinion, is even more. And that importance being what and why. Because attention and the number of people and the time that they have to give 2 seconds to your new feature or your new product is still fixed.
Yeah, it's such an important point in that if you don't have this sort of body of work and knowledge, you don't look at things like everything's apples and apples. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was talking about Sling, but this is now, I'm going to date me 20 years ago. We were doing some stuff with Sling. So we had a physical box called Sling Box, and it was $250. And sometimes people would get into these conversations, not, press interviews, but just conversations about what did we see as competition. And I answered things like the Xbox, because it was the same price point, which means they're both fighting for the same entertainment dollar space of your brain, right? So I love that you said that. And I think you're right, by the way, those 2 seconds, that is the battle these days, right?
That's it. And so how you capture those 2 seconds, especially for consumers, or I would argue probably the same in a B2B context as well, are absolutely essential. So yeah, now you can bring a ton of stuff to market, but actually getting it in front of the people, grabbing their attention and making a meaningful, valuable product for them is harder than ever. And you need product managers to help you do that. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, just throw the product managers out. And I'm more of a human optimist. I think that there is absolutely a role for this career in this age. And the last thing I'll say, back to the art, what AI I haven't seen it figure out yet, is the emotional resonance. And especially when you're building products for consumers or developing content for consumers, there is an emotional resonance that is incredibly important, and humans are essential to figuring out what that is.
Totally agreed. I think another mentor of mine made a great comment, but basically I've distilled it into our jobs right now. And the more you can think about this as being so core to what we do, is taste and judgment, right? Because I can have ChatGPT give me 20 episode titles for this based on the transcript. Most of them will be fine. In fact, I'll probably use an AI selected one as the final, or prompted one, maybe with some massaging, maybe not. But I also believe that the AI would never, ever pick the right one for the vibe I want. Mm-hmm. It might outproduce me from a A/B testing and et cetera.
Right.
But if I'm looking for what's the Jeremy vibe of this, no matter how much training I give it, it's still only going to get me so far. Yeah. So I love what you're saying. And I think I could spend half an hour talking about nothing but modern AI and product management. We want to know how did you get to the informed position to have all this? So give us, if you will, 15 seconds. What happened to Accompany, for those who haven't heard of it? And then what was sort of the next bit of your arc like?
So we tried to say the name Accompany on the radio, so we changed the name to Mob Shop. So that's the first thing. But we had a great run over the 3 years and ultimately shut it down. And the company was shut down. So it 2001, it suffered like the other .coms. However, we were able to patent that technology because it was the first time it was ever done, and ultimately sold that patent to Groupon. So I'd like to think
for those listening who aren't quite sure on the timing of this, and I wasn't going to spoil any of this. I knew about the Mob Shop ending, although I forgot when you first said it. Mob Shop was the .com era of Groupon, which is the Web 2.0 era of whatever's happening these days. So we are like 2 generations on seeing this tech replenish effectively. Okay, so, but you didn't go over there
to Groupon. No, we sold the IP. And then obviously they had a successful IPO. So we were just a little bit ahead of our time, which happens when you innovate. So from Mob Shop, I basically spent the next, let's just call it, couple decades working on small consumer products at this intersection of content, commerce, and community, and figuring out how to scale them up. Like, how do you get a kernel of an idea that can create value to several consumers, and how do you scale that up and create a real business, create real economic value from it? So some brands, that I had the good fortune to be a part of were things like ModCloth, which was the very first social commerce retailer of the time. It was the first retailer to engage the community in a really meaningful way. And while at ModCloth, I'm really proud of one of the innovations that we had there, which was we were the very first retailer, this was under my leadership, to introduce user generated style, street style, and photos into the commerce experience. It had never been done before. And it was a bunch of research, IDEO, design thinking, methodologies that led us to this insight that people wanted to see how the clothes were styled in the real world. So we introduced that into the experience and our customers loved it. And we saw our key metrics, go up. So it was really such a win-win at the time.
So quick touching back to where we were a second ago, how much of building that out as the product leader on that from was the art versus the science, right? You were doing something that hadn't been done before. It's interesting, by the way, Sarah, in that is our common thread is we both were doing product leadership roles at startups that in many cases were small, became household names or didn't, but those companies might have been the first time that thing ever did. So how did you come to take that plunge? Was that a huge leap of faith or was there tons of data that say this is a slam dunk winner?
Yes. When the founders created ModCloth, when they started it, they had this insight. Their original insight was engage the community in the shopping experience and it will create, stickiness, sell clothes. And it was more than just a place to shop. So they had a program called Be the Buyer. And Be the Buyer was essentially a pick or skip type of fun feature, like a little game. You saw a sweater and you let the audience say like, I like it, I don't like it. And the merchants use that as a signal. Should we actually sell this sweater, in the next season or not?
What was this like? Was this the Tinder of clothes at the time?
Basically, yes. That's a great reference. Tinder of clothes, pick or skip. Do you like it? And it was really noteworthy and customers liked it or they loved it, but it was a small group of customers. It didn't get a tremendous amount of engagement. So I remember talking to the CEO and founder of the company, and the ask was, we want to keep innovating in social commerce. We have a few ideas, but we're not sure where to go. Like, where do we take this? So a huge amount of white space, some constraints, like, yes, social commerce, but what is that? And so after a series of conversations and interviews and generative research where we went into people's homes, we came up with several ideas, right? And we developed something called a vision type, where we brought many of those ideas to life in a prototype, so to speak. And then we showed that to customers, right? And we got feedback on what resonates with you. And this idea ultimately came out of a few cycles of that, where we realized it's the photos. People are constantly drawn to this idea of this photo and street style, which again, wasn't even a word back then, but we were seeing people in these user-generated clothes. And from there, we then had to figure out, okay, so the photos matter, but what is the manifestation of the photos in the shopping experience? And the first one was actually something called the style gallery. So it was a separate place on the website where you could see all the different clothes styled in different ways and you could heart them, much like Instagram has today, but you could heart it or like it, comment, whatever. And then we realized, well, that's fun, but it's not actually helping drive the business. So we iterated on that and we put these photos directly on the product detail pages themselves. So when you're looking at your red sweater on the product detail page, you can see how members of the community have styled that sweater or sweaters that were very similar to it, like other red sweaters. And that's where it really popped. Like people loved it. And we saw not only the customer engagement, but movement of the business. And that was also an interesting insight because we thought it would drive, in e-commerce, there are a couple different key metrics. One of them is conversion, which is essentially how many of all the people that come to your website, how many people convert to a purchase, right? That's conversion. And then another key metric is average order value. How much does each one of those customers actually spend? What is the value, the total dollar amount of their order? And so when customers were coming, we thought it was a conversion play, that if you could see someone wearing that red sweater, you would be incented to actually hit the buy button and buy the sweater. No, it did help conversion a little bit. What it really helped with was average order value. So people saw the sweater and they're like, that looks great with black jeans. I'm going to go buy the black jeans. And so as you can see, it started in art, generative research. A lot of, we think there's an idea here. And through several iterations, it actually got to, we're putting outfit photos on the product detail pages themselves. And it's helping the business, but it didn't even help the business with the original hypothesis. It helped average order value, not conversion. So it's really quite an interesting blend of both art and science.
I have that version of things we did at Sling. I often have used the parallel to skydiving and landing on the side of a mountain. You're landing somewhere, and it's easy to see that you could go higher from here or lower from here. And you can see a trail, but you don't know from looking at a trail which way it will necessarily go. Is it a temporary up for going down? Is it temporary down for going up? And I think about giving yourself that permission to be, we got to land on the side of the mountain before we can figure out if we're going up or down.
Yep.
Right. You got to start with something. So given you had seen a lot of success by sort of being in the thick of it, who was guiding you through any of this at all? Like, I think we have similarities again. Like, I didn't ever really work for a product leader more senior than me, right? Ever.
Yes.
Right. So how were you developing as a leader, obviously on the product side, but as a person?
Yes. Oh, such a great question. Similarly, there were no senior product leaders. That didn't exist, right? So I very quickly found I was reporting to founders, right? Founders, CEOs. And I, looking back, am so grateful for that. Like, I had the opportunity to work with some really smart, visionary people and help come on board and partner with them to bring that vision to life in really interesting ways. So I'm super, grateful for those opportunities. I look to peers in many ways to help with the actual job. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I think a lot of that is so relevant even today with AI, right? Like, there's just a very small group of people who truly knows how these things work. Like, I've been working with AI for years now, actually, but still it's changing so rapidly that even the people in it, we're all just trying to keep up. Like, what is happening? What's going on?
Yeah, I have a hunch if a certain population were to get sort of lost on an island somewhere, there'd be a lot of systems where people are like, should we turn it off? Does it, what's it do? Does anyone know what to do? Does anyone seen an off switch? We don't know how to do these.
Right.
There might be 3 people who actually know what's going on the internet today. I don't even know.
Realistically, there might be 1,000.
Yeah.
There might be just about a couple thousand people that if they ended up on an island, the whole thing's
yeah. We got to start again with sticks and rocks because I don't know how we do any of the rest. So were there people along that way that invested in you? Did you have formal mentors, or was it the opportunity, just simply you were around such amazing people that it was the osmosis of it?
Along the way, we brought in a product leader named Marty Kagan, and he is the founder of the Silicon Valley Product Group. And I remember he came in and spoke to our product team and helped us really evolve and transform. And meeting him, it was the first time in my career where I was like, oh my gosh, you're completing my product sentences. You actually get me. You've seen enough. You have enough pattern recognition. So I was very lucky to encounter Marty early on. I brought him in even to a couple of when I became, CPO, I brought him in to help train and coach many of the teams. I actually, if you look close, I'm on his book jacket of the book Inspired as a testimony. So we had a bit of a mentor relationship. He was a mentor for me. And I'd say from a product leadership perspective, he was probably the only person that really could coach me. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it was much more of a peer relationship or, figuring out together, just like in a mob shop, when I knew that one product manager, we were like, wait, what's your roadmap? How do we do this? It's just been a whole series, a career of that.
Now, as product leaders go today, I think everybody would look at you and I and just be like, okay, that's what they do. Very cool. Let's be transparent for a moment. You've gone through the industry when it was a lot less receptive to female leadership in tech, right? And I don't want to go into the political side because we're going to stay away from that forever, trust me. But I would be curious, when you look at that sort of statement, and especially younger women today getting into tech, which I think is a lot more natural. I'd be curious how that was an issue, if at all, for you, and maybe what guidance you give someone young who wants to follow a path like yours.
Absolutely. I am so grateful to a couple of key women leaders that I had the pleasure and good fortune of working with when I was having my first baby. So I had my first child. And as anyone who's a parent, even if you have a fur baby, this child comes into your life and your heart explodes. And all of a sudden you realize, whoa, there's more than just my ambition and my career, more here to take care of and to nurture. So I was supposed to go back from maternity leave 3 months in, and I couldn't do it. I'm like, I can't leave my kid. I can't leave my baby. I can't imagine saying goodbye to my baby. So I actually quit. And I feel really bad looking back, but I'm like, I can't go back. And wow. I bet my boss was going to kill me because she was expecting me back and there was a pile of work that she needed to get done, but I just couldn't do it. Fast forward 1 month, I think my baby was 4.5, and I realized, oh my God, I have to use my brain. I'm dying. I can't be a full-time mom all the time. I love working. What did I do? And so I called her back and I said, I would love to work, but I only want to work 2 days a week. Can you work with me on this? And she was amazing. She's like, yes, wow. Let's do it. And so she brought me back in at 2 days a week. And then the same manager, she actually went to a different company, and she called me and she's like, I have a perfect job for you. But I said, I only want to work 3 days a week. And she's like, fine, let's make it happen. So she was there and helped me work 3 days a week. And then eventually I wanted to work 4. And she guided me and supported me through that entire experience, so that even when I had young children and I wanted to be home for more of their lives, I was still able to stay relevant and contribute and have a meaningful contribution in the industry. And I think if I had to have gotten off the track entirely for those 5 years, it would have been so much harder to have gotten back on, and I truly would not be where I am today. So I credit her with that. And now in this position, I try and support particularly parents, really any caregivers with their needs, because sometimes life just calls and you have to make those decisions. And it's such a loss if a company isn't willing to work with those people and figure out how to thread the needle so they can keep growing and making a big impact on the business and on the world.
Let me ask you your opinion, because I think we both try to lead with, put our hearts out there and lead as humans. And you'll every now and then run into people who are like, can't operate that way, not good for profits, not good for et cetera. Yeah. My thesis is, actually, I still think I'm right, because I think the long-term effect of treating people as humans who have dignity and agency, you get the best stuff out of them. And now that would be a very self-supportive thesis. I'm curious your experience, because you've also worked in some cutthroat kind of places. Mm-hmm. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's true. And I think especially I'll speak to the women out there now, or there are real systemic structural issues like the pink tax and the wage gap. And while women have made incredible strides in tech in particular and other places, the truth of the matter is I've been in so many boardrooms that are just men, or I've gone to pitch businesses looking for capital. It's all men. I mean, a vast majority are men. So there's still a tremendous amount of work left to be done. And so you asked me before, what advice I would have for women in their 20s. And I would say, you can have it all. You can do all of these things. You can have an amazing career. You can have a wonderful family. You can, but it does come at an enormous price. And so it's really important to make sure that you also take time for yourself to recharge so that you can be those strong shoulders that the next generation is going to climb on and break more glass and get more done. I think it's such an important role. And I say just keep moving forward and we will keep changing history.
I love that you say that. One of the things I've tried my best, I hope those who have worked for me would chime in. One of the things I've always told, especially women, is go ahead, ask me for a raise. Been one of my first orders of business as I've taken on teams is it's okay to ask. Now I'm going to say no, probably more than I'm going to say yes, but I want you to ask. I want you to build that habit of asking. And I don't want you to leave me off the hook for giving you a good answer as to the why or why not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to, I actually think it's become relevant for young men in the workforce as well, who are
Yeah.
getting sort of less and less guidance on that. How do you encourage younger women in particular to have that confidence without necessarily knowing what kind of environments they might be in? Because I find it can be tricky because you want to give them this great advice, but if they're working for the wrong kind of boss, what do you say to them?
So a couple thoughts for you. I have known a couple of female founders who are just exceptional women who beat all the odds and built incredible companies. Like, they're amazing. And I've asked them that question. Like, you're in these rooms with these investors, they're all men, 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 men. How did you do it? And their answer, both of them separately, totally different occasions, were they just don't think about it. They just keep plowing forward, like one step in front of the other. Wayne Gretzky's, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. Like, you just keep going. So that's certainly one approach. That being said, I have been even personally in an environment, for example, and I've seen others in an environment where it's just not the right culture fit. And this is not a place where you even want to be. Like, you could bend over
Yeah.
backwards and fit yourself that square peg into that round hole, but it's not worth it. Like, it's truly not worth selling your soul. And when you believe in yourself, sometimes you do have to make that change and find a place that is going to be supportive. And there's probably something everywhere in between too. So it's being really thoughtful about what works for you and how you can create an impact in the environment where you can be successful, with the realism of sometimes, we're not all perfect either. So maybe there's some introspection that you have to do internally to, be your best self as well.
I like that. And I do think, the biggest tip I think I've developed for younger people, like to Sarah's point, if that environment's not right, on sort of how to detect it a little bit going in, is actually in the interview process. One of the things I've been coaching folks is everything about how they treat you in that job application through interview process is how they will treat you as an employee. So
Yes.
one example is if you get an offer and they tell you have to decide within the hour or some other crazy version of that, you get an email at 11 p.m., respond by 8 a.m. or anything that just, you're like, oh, well, that's the company you're about to join. If you don't like how they handle giving you an offer, you're certainly not going to like how you get a performance review, et cetera. Do you have any other little warning things to look out for?
Well, one of my favorite sayings is to run to something, not run from something, whenever possible. Like, I think the best case scenario is making those decisions not out of fear, but from courage, not a place of fear, but making your decisions from a place of courage, not a place of fear.
One of my mentors has a version of that also, the don't make fear-based decisions are terrible kind of thing. Yeah, I love that you share that. You've accomplished so many things. How do you define success today?
Being in the consumer business for a long time, I think success is when you can truly help make someone's life better. When you bring a product to market that brings joy into their life or makes their life easier, but just creates true value for that customer. Like, I think that is really success at the end of the day, like from a consumer business perspective. And as a leader in those companies, that's what I think about. Now, of course, there's another step, which is if you're going to have a successful business, not only do you need to create create customer value, you need to create economic value, right? Like, so you need a real business that is sustainable over the long term. Success also means creating a long-term sustainable business and culture where you can actually make money and pay people that they deserve. And then internally, like, success and leadership for me has really been about, for a while now, and continues to be about helping people achieve their best selves at work, right, in a professional environment. So one of the things as I look back that I'm most proud of in my career is developing executives and leaders. There's several people that I worked with who may have been product managers back in the day, and now they're VPs and CPOs in their own right, and they're running successful product organizations. So that ability to really help people grow and develop in their careers is a big signal that I'm doing something right in my for me.
Such a great statement. And by the way, I think again another kinship. Nothing I get more joy out of is getting a text or a call before a LinkedIn update of someone who once worked for me is now taking on this even more impressive role or off to do those things. Sarah, if people want to find you or you want to direct them to somewhere of a great cause on the internet, where would you be sending people these days?
So if people want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn and they are happy to ping me. I'm always interested in meeting with other people and especially product leaders or young women or founders. I'm doing advisory work now and board work. So always excited about hearing about new innovations and meeting new people. In terms of a cause, I would encourage everybody to check out the work of Sonita, Sonita. She is an adopted family member who is truly, talk about changing the world. She's a human rights activist, and she is coming out with a new book. By the time this airs, it might be out there, but she has a book called Sonita. Check it out. And Sonita is at sonita.net or on Instagram.
That's absolutely wonderful. I didn't know you were going to hit me with something quite as meaningful because I also like to just check in with other, especially product people. Is there an AI tool or hack or something that you're like enjoying the heck out of these days that we should all know about and copy you on?
This one might be pretty common, but I was telling you before that one of my children has actually had some pretty major surgery. Like he's doing great. But along the way, we'll get these after visit summaries that are really detailed medical jargon. And I can understand most of it, but holy cow, ChatGPT has been the best. I will just copy and paste the whole doctor summary in there and ask it to talk to me in layman's terms, like in non-medical terms. What does this actually mean in terms of what happened, in terms of recovery? What can we expect next? And it has been a godsend. It's like a doctor in my pocket.
I love that. Thank you so much for taking time with me today. Your story is great, and I hope there are other young women aspiring into careers such as yours that can follow some of your footsteps, because I'm still following them, and I can't wait to see where you go from here.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Have a great day.